Speaking of F1 podcast, it's our Australian Grand Prix review. After a chaotic race, quite frankly, the first time there have been 3 red flags in an F1 race. And to just discuss it all with myself, Nigel Shue, I've got Adam Dickinson and Freddie Coates. I forgot to come up with some kind of intro that I usually do when I present, but I haven't this time. How are you guys doing?
I mean, in itself, I feel like that is an intro, is Nigel's lack of intro.
I think the basics of an intro were met, which is hello, welcome, this is what we're doing, these are the people.
Yes, I guess.
And I'm doing all right. I'm tired, but apart from that, I'm all right.
Yeah, same. I'm quite tired as well. Are you tired, Adam?
I am, yeah. I'm running on about 2.5 hours sleep. So
it's hard to fit in
tired.
A busy week of work where you're ill, followed by 2 5:30 starts when you're supposed to be having your recuperation days. Yeah. But don't woe is me, people, because it was fun. I enjoyed it.
I didn't enjoy it. No, I did. I did. Let's first talk about Max Verstappen won, of course, second race win of the year, extended his lead in the championship. I think we've got to start with the red flags. I said let's go through them one by one. The first red flag, when Albon crashed, they said it was gravel and debris on the track, mostly gravel. Do we think that was needed, Freddie?
My first reaction to it was, oh, that's a strange red flag. There must be something more to it. The fact that it was the gravel was quite surprising. I would say from my, not all the information I know, not a red flag, but yeah, I feel difficult calling this kind of thing out sometimes, but it looked like a safety car cleanup rather than a red flag cleanup, but because they didn't really repair any of the barriers and things like that. So I mean, I guess for caution's sake, if you think there's a big old dent somewhere, deal with it. But that's my kind of on the fence take.
Yeah, I'd echo that. Really, it was a bit of a surprise. It didn't look like there was anything that couldn't be cleared up and dealt with a lot quicker behind the safety car. But again, we weren't there, and there might have been other things that we didn't spot. So it's not the kind of not got a major problem with it, but was a bit surprised.
Yeah, I've quite similar. I personally didn't felt that the red flag wasn't needed, but I mean, I'm trying to think, has this happened before? Was it 2020 Belgium? Russell caused a red flag when he crashed and there was dead. It was like just before Stabilo. I can't remember if that was for gravel.
Oh no, I remember that because I thought there should be a red flag.
That was it. Yeah,
that was because you had Giovinazzi and Russell having an absolute debris fest, and it was a surprise that it wasn't a red flag, in my opinion, for that one.
So like that scenario.
I think a scenario which you could say was similar would be Saudi Arabia's first race when Schumacher went into the barriers, and they didn't know whether they would need to repair the barriers or not, so red flagged it, and then was like, oh no, the barrier's fine, but they red flagged it.
Damaged barriers.
To that.
Damaged barriers, I absolutely understand, but gravel, personally, once the cars are all bunched up, it takes them over 2 minutes to get round Albert Park. I would have thought the marshals can sweep it up or they can get the some kind of machine out, and I guess maybe the machine.
I don't know. They don't really have a precedent for track sweepers in F1, like they do in IndyCar. It's not an oval.
I would have thought they would have had brushes, but
they'd have brushes. But I guess that's the thing. They wanted to put something more substantial on it, perhaps.
Yeah,
like a track sweeper, which the ones they use in F1 are like the sort of ones you get at the side of the road, which go at 10 miles an hour. They're not especially designed like the ones you get in the States. So if they want to do that, if they want to do a definite big old proper wipe slate clean, because a broom will work for the most part, but I think the fact that the gravel, let's be honest, I've never seen that much gravel brought onto a racetrack.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to add. I mean, I don't, because it was happening through practice. I think it was FP1 that they had a red flag on just and it wasn't for this in the end, but people thought it was the gravel being pulled onto the track. There were a fair few drivers running off and then really raking it on. So I don't know if it's what like ground effect or something, maybe sucking more like carrying it with the car when they run through the gravel onto the track, I don't know, but it did feel like there was more on the track than I've noticed previously, or whether they've changed up the gravel, but this isn't the gravel podcast, so I'm not entirely sure.
But yeah, but
What-
that's my point. It's just it was a lot, and it was a very
Yeah.
visible amount from a camera that was relatively far away, for that kind of thing. So if they want to definitely sweep it all off, well, you're not going to get that much off with the broom. Genuinely, if we're being as sticklers on it as possible, then if they want to get a machine, I can't remember if we didn't see it because it was a red flag. If they got a truck down there to kind of sort it out or not, but
what I'd say is they did all go through it anyway, so they would have cleaned it up by kind of going through it. I thought, but I think we all kind of agree.
no, come on, Nigel. It was one little channel. 3 cars went through it, and there's a little channel, but there was
Nah,
still
they all
small
went
ones
through it because
around
the
it.
safety car. It was like a good minute or two. on the
Yeah, it was a safety car. Went through it, and then they had the red flag. So I guess that if you look at that from a feedback perspective, they look at it and go, "Oh yeah, this isn't going to work out as best as possible." Then
Totally. I don't know. I feel well. We all feel it was a bit cautious. I guess I feel it's a bit too cautious, maybe. But yeah.
I mean, I said this before. On the side of caution.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it gets dangerous when we start saying too cautious and things like that, and that's why I think we were a bit of reservation at the start of this point. But if that had, I would be more. I'm more surprised that was red flag than safety car, but it's the kind of thing I'm happy to benefit the doubt and leave there.
Second red flag, Magnussen's crash at turn 2 when his tyre fell off. Do you think similar thoughts about that in terms of red flag, no red flag?
First of all, I think we should blame Magnussen for it, not say his tyre fell off.
Yeah, he ran into the wall.
Even if he was hit by the sun, it's not the best look of a crash for him. But I think there was a car over the place. There was debris that had been brought down the whole straight. Again, we only see what we see on cameras, so just have to take the word that there was a lot of debris there.
Yeah.
I was more surprised for this one, actually. I mean, again, like just going off what we could see, but it didn't look like it just felt like there really wasn't that much, and it felt like it could be. I don't feel like I've seen something like that pull a red flag. It felt like a pretty classic safety car incident to me, so I was actually quite I was very surprised at that one. It felt, to be honest, it felt like they were pulling the red flag because it was the end of the race and they didn't want to end it under the safety car. That to me felt
do you
like
think that's a good thing?
No,
because
I don't. It just it feels like it's making race judgment decisions based on entertainment factor rather than, I guess, sporting factors to me.
Ready?
I would say I'm okay with it because I think a sporting factor could be racing to the finish, in my opinion. I think that is then that you could argue that is a sporting factor, but I completely get Adam's side as well. It's the kind of thing I do like the sort of penalty shootout vibe over the end of like a two laps at the end that we've had a red. I do quite like that. I think the times we've had it, it's been really quite fun and exciting. And personally, if it gets to a point where it's kind of like, well, yes, a safety car lap will count as a lap, but racing is what this is. It's a race. Then have a red flag at a certain point of time, just because it will then give us racing at the end. I'm okay with that personally.
It's interesting because I mean the two instances I first think of is Baku 2021 and Monza 2022 last year. So Baku 2021, they had a red flag with 2-3 laps to go, and it's when Hamilton
deserved red flag for the
flipped it.
crash. That one actually.
Yeah, so that's what the difference is, I guess, because Verstappen's car was like in the middle of the track. But then Monza last year, there was a lot of backlash, let's say, from people about why they didn't red flag it, and the race finished on the safety car, didn't it? In the end, with like there was an incident with 4 or 5 laps to go, and it just went behind the safety car.
Ricardo broke down. Was it in between the Lesmos? I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a weird location.
Yeah.
It was a location that was difficult to get to, and that understandably brought out the safety car and was a long safety car.
Yeah, and at the time, I think after the race, I said I didn't mind that because there's been, I think, 9 or 10 past instances where a race has finished under safety car. And personally, I don't
Yeah,
mind
I
it.
don't
Yes,
really.
it's not entertaining, but it kind of is what it
It's a
is.
sense, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but obviously, I can see why F1 would do it for that kind of entertainment factor that Adam kind of mentioned. But yeah, I would side more with Adam, saying kind of for the purer aspect,
Mhm.
and I guess tradition as well, because this thing of red flagging races, with a few laps ago, is a very recent thing. I feel.
I think like part of me, and it remains to be seen because they do seem to be. I mean, it's just going off from race, but it's the first time we've had 3 red flags. They do seem to be more trigger happy on it, and I think what I want to see above all else is that they are treating incidents the same. So if that Magnussen incident happens on lap 2 or lap 22 or whenever, then I'd want it to be treated the same all through. So if they're doing that, I would say that's something, and then that's just making the decision based off how I guess you want to control the flow of the race and how much racing action you do want to see versus time taken, basically. So yeah, I think if they are treating all of these incidents the same, then that is at least something. But yeah, it kind of remains to be seen over the season how they will continue to do this, whether this will be a one-off or whether we will see more of it. But yeah, again, I just think it's yeah, I think it just felt a bit too heavy-handed on the red flags.
Are we? I found a standing start restarts. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's traditional as well. If you want to talk about purity,
I'm sure from 2001 to 2017, they
exactly. We're going before
when in the
2001. That's my
90s.
point.
Yeah, when the
Yeah.
90s they did. So
When before they had a safety car,
Mm.
you would red flag and you'd restart with the original order, and that was it. To be honest.
One thing I would add to this, and I don't know whether we will touch on it later, whether you're planning to, but I feel like if it's a safety car immediately into a red flag, I saw this mentioned online, and I did kind of think, that's quite a good point, is take it from the order where the safety car was, because it feels a bit unfair that you have people pitting under the safety car and then they can throw the red flag 5 or 10 seconds later and they've immediately, or, 30 seconds later and they've immediately lost a lot of ground. To me, that felt a bit, it happened to Russell. It felt like.
I think just change the red flag rules. I don't think start messing around with sort of where cars can be and things like that. Because then in my opinion, I just think just throw a red flag all the time if you're going to sort of fiddle around with how a race is then neutralized officially. I think if you just make it so that you can't change tires under the red flag, then in my opinion that negates that, and I'm okay with that. I thought they did change that because what was it 2011? Nigel, correct from wrong, Monaco, where they had a fantastic closing stage with Alonso, Button, and Vettel. Yeah. All on differing age tires, or Button and Alonso on really, really young tires and Vettel on really old tires. And they had lapped the whole field and they were fighting, and it was getting really, really tense. And then there was a red flag because of a nasty, nasty crash. Petrov having a nasty crash at the end of the swimming pool. And they were able to change the tires. And there was a backlash then about, oh no, we had a fantastic thing with this particular rule, scuppered it. And I thought, and I genuinely thought this was changed in 2017, but I think I misread it. I think it was voted against changing it. Because I remember when we got to 2020 Monza, it was the first red flag we'd had in like 4 years. Yeah. And I was like, well, they're not allowed to change the tyres. Why do they keep talking about Lance Stroll? Why? They're getting it all wrong. And I was like, oh, no, shit, I'm getting it wrong. I was getting really irate at it. But I was the one getting it wrong. But I genuinely think they'd moved to change that rule, and it didn't get changed, probably because of unanimity back in the old strategy group rules. That's too nerdy on how F1 rules are set, by the way. We're not going into that. But I think I sometimes I put my hand up again. I like the randomness of what a red flag can do to the strategy of a race and things like that. That it can mix it up. That the guy could just end up in like 10th place and some random can end up in 4th place and things like that. But I also like the idea that it's just kind of like, well, just don't change the tires, because why would you have that as a rule there? So
I think I think, well, obviously there's millions of F1 fans in the world, and the way the red flag goes, you'll like it depending on how it suits or doesn't suit your driver. But for those who, I guess neutrals and want to see a good race, I, I think the fairest way is what you said. You can red flag it, but then you can't change tyres. Because take Sunday's race for example, Russell still would have had, we would have seen the strategy of Russell pitting early and then everyone else in front of him having to pit. Say there's no red flag and there's a safety car, we would have seen the exact same thing. So not changing tyres is more fair in that sense. The only issue is obviously if there's damage and that kind of thing, then I think you should be able to change it. But then there's going to be a case where two cars have collided towards the front and then someone's got a puncher, someone's got damage from wing, and then
punches are different.
changing that kind of punches obviously. But then,
Don't
like,
send a
front
car out with a
wings,
puncture for a standing restart.
But then like
I
front
think
wings
I would
or
say
something.
I would say that the actual continuation of that, I think, would then become people saying, well, why are you allowed to pit onto the safety car then, and so on. And there's an element of that could go too far. But I guess if a lap's being counted under the safety car, then you can use it as a strategic lap. Who knows? Obviously, the safety car, the pit lane is closed in some series for safety car, and it can be on event. But I think for the pit lane for safety cars, I think it's fine just to always leave it open, because it's what it is. It's kind of like I don't know sometimes.
It would have been fascinating to see for Australian Grand Prix, example, how
First 10
Russell.
laps were for most of the race.
Yeah, well, I was going to say how Russell would have fared, obviously, if he didn't retire in the end, but with his that strategy versus the rest. But obviously, the red flag gets rid of that because everyone's dead on the same strategy. So in that sense, it kind of limits the strategy because then everyone changes tyres and that kind of thing. So that's what I'm not a particular fan of. I'd say, yeah. Adam, any more thoughts?
Oh, sorry, yeah, Adam, you throw, and I've said a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to banning tyre changes under the red flag, but it does feel like there'll be situations where it does. I mean, like you say, with a puncture, or I don't know. It just feels
Or a
like there
wet
can be
race.
situations, where it doesn't, where it does end up backfiring and something that we've not thought of, and that is, what F1 races do is like you have things that are very small chance, but over the course of many races and many laps, then they end up coming out. So I think, I think I guess it just felt really harsh that Russell did lose out so much based off, kind of that strategy call, and then he dropped to 8th place, I think. And it just kind of, I feel like if they're not going to ban pit stops under changing tyres into the red flag, then I would like to see, if it goes from safety car straight into a red flag, then they take the order from the safety car, is what I would say.
Well, then equally, I'm sure there's many races like Monza 2020 where Gasly benefited. Well, actually, he didn't benefit. That was because of safety car. But like people benefited, and like Silverstone 2021 after the Verstappen Hamilton collision, Hamilton benefited because he had damage and would have retired without the Russell.
Yeah, but that's not.
It goes both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's not like tyres.
Yeah.
It's not strategy. I'd say it's like different ballpark, really.
The only thing to add on this for me is, if you're not allowed to change tyres, which is what I think should happen, they should just have a normal restart after the safety car rather than a standing start.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So then it's basically just being a safety car period, except there's been a red flag in the middle, and a race stoppage should be a stoppage, not a strategy thing for me. So that's how
I agree with that, which is why I then go back to, well, then I want them to change the tyres onto the red flag.
Yeah,
it's the thing. It's rock and a hard place for me on a lot of this, and a lot of things make sense from both sides of the way I want to watch it. And at the end of the day, I'm a fan of it, so I want to have a lot of fun.
So yeah, after the second red flag, there was a third red flag, of course, the record-breaking red flag, you might call it, because there was absolute mayhem on the final, green flag restart, I guess, with Sargent and De Vries hitting each other at the back. Gasly went off, then collected Esteban Ocon, Carlos Sainz nudged Fernando Alonso.
Nudged.
Well, yeah. So we can talk about that. Turn 4, turn 3. Stroll went off, didn't he, as well? I'm going to do this
Perez
all
went off.
Stroll went straight off. Perez went
Stroll
off
went off.
at turn 1. Did he go off at turn 3 as well?
Yeah, turn 1. Stroll went off at turn 3.
Yeah.
Basically,
that was it.
Sargent rammed the back of De Vries in
Yeah,
a very
yeah,
amateur braking zone. To be honest with him.
I think we all agreed that this had to be a red flag because it was just
Oh, of
cars
course,
everywhere.
yeah.
Of course.
So yeah, this is a definite red flag. But yeah, on the action on the incident itself, Gasly and Ocon. I guess that was just. Could Gasly have rejoined the track a bit better? I think that's my question.
The rejoining of the track was fine because
Okay.
it was the squeezing on Ocon that he did inadvertently because he's
Yeah.
a racing driver and was looking forwards and was just trying to get his car pointing, which it did. It was just the fact then that Ocon then swept out round, as again is his right, that then meant the two were on the collision course.
It felt like a brain fade from Gasly a bit, or it just felt like kind of compounding the mistake of I don't actually, I can't remember what, whether it was his fault. Did anyone tag him off or anything? But whatever. It was
He
then
went straight off on
compounding.
his own.
Yeah. But it was then compounding that he came on and he just didn't, look around. It felt like he was so focused on making lost ground that he didn't actually check, what was happening around him. So yeah, just like nothing malicious or intentional, but yeah.
If he stayed a bit more left, it would have been absolutely fine, and he would have probably finished still in the points. So,
Yeah.
And they probably would have finished that lap, I reckon. I agree with Adam. It was a bit of just kind of like you're joining a track. You should look in your right mirror and keep left. And he joined fine, but then just underestimated whatever else was pretty much.
Mirror signal maneuver. And he didn't do.
Yes, with all
did
of
the maneuver.
all of the indicators they have on these cars.
Oh, he would have had to hand signal, but he did one of the mirror signal maneuver.
In a way, he did a form of semaphore by crashing into Ocon.
What's a semaphore?
Doing it
like
by
flags.
hand signals.
Right.
Indicators on like old cars used to literally be like a lever that would fall out on the back right of the car if you're turning right and back left if you're turning left, and that's essentially that kind of thing.
All right.
School buses in America have stop signs that like fold out from the bus like that, and it's cool.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
If you're listening to this on Spotify, it's one of those bits where you're gonna have to go on YouTube again. So I'm 15, 20 minutes in. I don't know.
Timestamp it in voiceover, maybe. Probably.
I thought we were quite succinct there.
What was I going to say? I know it's very different in different circumstances, but it did remind me a bit of Canada 2019 Vettel.
Yes.
Hamilton.
Yeah.
I know this was sort of restart and that, and at the time I was kind of 50-50 on whether Vettel should have been.
Gasly had more places to go.
Gasly also regained control of the car, I think, absolutely. Whereas with Vettel, that was always the question of whether he did just kind of go, like whether he could have not gone all the way to the right. It felt like with Gasly, then
Gasly could have gone straight. He could have stayed off the track. Whereas with Vettel, he went in too hot, had no control on the grass, which meant he only could rejoin the track based on where the wall was for that. Whereas for Gasly, it was an acre more space off and on the track.
And there was just a time difference. I think there was a much bigger difference between him coming on to the track and kind of going across to the wall. At least I remember it anyway. So yeah, but I do know what you mean. I was going to mention that and I didn't, but yeah,
I didn't think about it, but I can see the similarities now you mention it. And the one I thought of was the 2015 start at Melbourne, where I think it was Maldonado got tagged around by someone, but I can't quite remember that. So
I can't quite remember that either, mate.
I think he just went into the same bit of wall.
Oh, right, yeah. Do you think Gasly should have had a penalty? Yes, no? A grid penalty, I guess.
I think based on the way we discussed it here, it was a bit of brain fadey, wasn't it?
So a little free grid, maybe.
Yeah,
I think so because it was his rejoin, and that kind of means race ban for him, doesn't it? Because he's on 11 penalties.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Doing.
Yeah,
Slash Victor Martins.
Yeah. But yeah, just to confirm,
Ooh, I
Gasly
don't know
didn't
if
get
he's eligible.
Gasly didn't get any penalty points or anything, so he can still race. And Alpine,
Yeah, the
gonna-
Alpine aren't going to push it, are they?
yeah, and Alpine were quite.
It would be
Alpine
funny
were,
if they did.
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
You got
Alpine were
Alex
quite.
Main in the steward's office arguing with himself.
That's
yeah,
I could see that happening actually, just by the nature of the man.
I mean, it's something that you can imagine from like like McLaren in 2007 or something like that, where like Alonso would be really pushing or Lewis would be really pushing to get Alonso banned or something like that. Like, yeah, you can imagine it for some spicier teammate battles, but yeah, nothing for this.
Well, I mean, it pretty much did happen in 1989 for McLaren when Ron Dennis was essentially arguing a championship away from Prost. But then again, that was visibly Prost's fault. But we don't need to get into that. That's going to be for one of our retro podcasts.
yeah.
Do it as like,
Ocon and Gasly
they
kind
don't
of.
exist.
Ocon and Gasly didn't make, I guess, too much of it, and yeah, it was all kind of friendly. So anything about the past didn't really.
I know what it reminded me of. It reminded me of Ocon and Perez in Baku in 2017 when they both shouldn't have put themselves where they did and definitely lost a win.
Definitely lost a win.
I think they lost a win because they were 3rd and 5th or something, 3rd and 4th, and then Ricciardo won that race. And he was
retro. Well, I say retro. It's 6 years ago. Yeah, that's a good example of that.
Here though, it did still cost them because it was 5th and 10th.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So that's a handy haul of points, 11 points. So yeah, that's
And they probably, like I say, they probably would have been based on the nature of Alonso having gone round and then Stroll going straight forward. They probably would have been 4th or 5th again anyway, 4th or 6th, even with the even with Gasly going off. Ocon, I think, was getting maybe Hulk would have been ahead, so they would have been about 5th or 6th or 7th or something like that. So
I mean, these are the kind of in that battle for, I guess, 5th in the Constructors' Championship. Yeah, then it's like races like this are going to be what decides it, where there are those much bigger hauls of points than you would usually get. So yeah, I think it is a massive loss to them. But yeah, just want to move on and learn from, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Gasly, he was running in that train of cars for most of the race behind the Mercedes, who were all behind, and Alonso, of course, but they were all behind Max Verstappen, who won in Melbourne for the first time. Were we surprised to see the first lap him getting overtaken by Russell and Hamilton?
Yeah, it felt like a bit of an uncharacteristically Max he made a few mistakes, so he just wasn't quite on it. He went off towards the end of the race. I mean, he was all weekend he was complaining about the kind of brake balance and the feel of the car, and yeah, it just to see him. Well, it's not just the fact that Russell jumped him off the line. It's then that Hamilton was able to come through a few corners later and get past him that did surprise me. So yeah, but Freddie, it sounds like maybe wasn't so.
I mean, I kind of expected Russell to be punchy as well. I was going for. I think, yeah, I agree with Adam that Max didn't get his elbows out on at turn 1 with Russell at all. He played that calmly, and I thought that was pretty impressive. It reminded me of Lewis in the 2017, 18, 19 kind of time where he would just be like, okay, cool, overtake me, that's fine, but I'm going to get the points and I'm going to win the championship, and it worked. And I think that was the game that Max was playing. There was just either I can just get out of the way, you can have your fun, but I will overtake you very soon, obviously. But then at turn 3, Max went, you could say, really tight on Lewis, but he was doing that while also having Sainz on the outside. So then he judged that really well also, as did Lewis with his send, which paid off. So I think from all of them at that point, it was really, really good racing.
Someone who's been on a guest on the podcast very recently, who's Scottish and got a baby coming soon, you know who you are. He said to me throughout last year,
congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Andrew. He said to me last year, Verstappen races Hamilton differently because of how he raced the club. So my response was, I don't think so. In 2021, it was just a case of the cars were so equal, or Mercedes were faster at some races, of course, that Verstappen had to get his elbows out. Whereas this year, or like most of last year, he knew he had the pace, so it doesn't have to be as aggressive. And Sunday was the perfect example of that. He knew he had the pace, so he could be super cautious. Yes, that's not in his kind of style, but he's got that maturity and knows that, so he can afford to break a bit early. He can afford to not, turn in aggressively, whatever.
But
I think he
then,
was sort of perfect example.
I think he was
of that.
cautious with Russell, but aggressive with Hamilton.
I
yeah,
don't think
and also
he
last
could
year,
have chopped Hamilton more. I felt.
last
No, I
year,
don't think so. Hamilton was half a car was on the curb.
I also think last year then there was a difference between Hamilton Verstappen racing even then than there was between Verstappen and Leclerc, and even Verstappen and Russell in Brazil. They didn't race that much, but the few times they did, it felt like there was still that fire there on the few flashpoints that there were between the two drivers. So I absolutely do think there is that difference, and yeah, okay, well that's that.
I just. No.
We need more examples of it because we have only had a handful of examples of them racing post 2021 based on where the cars are. And based on where the cars are, again, it lends itself to Max playing it a bit easier. So we do need to kind of just see a few more examples of that as the season or seasons go on.
I still think when you do look at that handful of examples, it does show a trend though.
A trend of
him racing Hamilton harder.
Wider topic. Anyway.
Yeah. Do we think, hypothetical, if Russell didn't pit and didn't break down and Mercedes were in a 1-2,
and Verstappen broke down.
Yeah. No, could Mercedes have beaten Verstappen at all, do you think?
It was the DRS forever strategy, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Which has been proven to work in the midfield. And I've always wanted to see work be used in this kind of this kind of strategy for a race, because a lot of teams just don't go for it. But I don't think Mercedes wanted to tell their drivers to do it. Looking at Hamilton, but I think the only way they could have come close to this was, like you say, Russell P1, Hamilton 7 tenths behind, keeping Verstappen 6 or 7 tenths behind for as long as possible, pitting Hamilton first, and then pitting Russell immediately after, so they could then have that kind of buffer, to protect from the undercut. That's the only way they could have kept the lead. And even then, I think Verstappen would have got one of them in the pit stops and overtaken the other. And so I think it's got to be a gargantuan model teammate drive, pretty much like Alonso and Ocon Brazil 2021.
Yeah,
they were doing that exact strategy, and it paid dividends for them, and they got double points. So it's the only. I just think that Red Bull was mighty today.
I'd love to see teams like relaying through on the DRS, so like swapping like every lap.
That's difficult.
You'd lose too much time.
Yeah, but it'd be fun.
Oh, you could do it at some tracks.
Like,
you could do it at Spa.
Team
you could
Pursuit.
do it at Monza.
Like, think Team Pursuit, just like
them,
like come through with the DRS.
Silverstone, maybe.
I'd love to see that. It never happened, but I'd love to see that.
You'd be going offline and stuff and be getting your tyres dirty. Just
again,
ruin that theory.
the Texas race at the IndyCar that we've just had. Go watch that.
But no, I think you are right, Freddie. That is the only way they would have won. And it's kind of one of those races, like normally you kind of almost want a safety car to throw up a strategy or make the race exciting. But for Sunday, I felt we didn't want the safety car to kind of see how that would have
The one bit of interesting racing we'll get this year.
Yeah, hopefully not. But even then, I feel like Hamilton and Russell would have had a great wheel-to-wheel battle or something if there were no safety cars, and obviously if Russell didn't have that issue. At the time before the red flag, actually, did you think Mercedes made a mistake by pitting Russell?
Yes, I did actually.
I did as well.
Because Hamilton alluded to it as well. Yeah, he alluded to it by saying we're at a disadvantage now because we've got one right behind. And that's it. And I think based on what I've just said about DRS being key, I think they needed to be in tandem.
Yeah, Adam?
Right thing to do though with Russell as well. I don't know.
I didn't, because I thought they needed to get that advantage. I thought to win, as we've discussed, they really I don't see them winning conventionally. I think they needed to take a risk to get the win. So in terms of getting the best result for the team, potentially not. But in terms of having a chance a genuine chance at a race win, I think that was the only way to get a genuine chance at the race win.
It's a very good point.
On Hamilton's drive, did very, very well to keep Alonso at bay. There were a few times Alonso kind of tried to push the pace, but Hamilton responded brilliantly. We heard lots on the radio about his tyres as usual. I don't know if he was bluffing or playing games there. I kind of feel he was, to be honest.
It was a visible management drive that sometimes when you see that you have these management drives, you don't see them in that kind of vein, but you could see the management there. You could see Alonso needing to manage, and you could see when that happened, Hamilton was able to manage him, and then do that himself at a decent pace. And then if Alonso was able to push, Hamilton was then able to match that. And he used his reserves in the exact right way as a driver, that is, and used his tires in the exact right way because that was a hard race for a lot of them. The reason they're all so close with Ferrari, with Gasly in the Alpine, with Hulkenberg, hell, even close as well in the Haas. The reason they were all close together was because they were definitely not near their maximum speed on those tires at all. They were managing to hell there, and they did that really well. So it was impressive. I genuinely found it quite interesting.
No, I did as well. Yeah, Adam, thoughts on Hamilton's race?
Yeah, I think Freddie summed it up pretty perfectly there, so not too much to add. But yeah, it was obviously a shame for Mercedes that Russell wasn't able to, really get a good stab at battling Verstappen, or at least show what he could do. But having said that, compared to the feeling around the team, how long ago was Bahrain? 5 weeks, 4 weeks? I don't know. It's been a while. It feels a lot better than that. So yeah, don't be too downhearted, Merc. And they look like it's what? No, it's not two podiums in 2 races because Russell lost his podium in Saudi Arabia.
Well, he did lose it, I guess. Yeah. What was I going to say? Yes, Alonso was third, hat-trick of podium to start the season. He did have that incident with Carlos Sainz, so I did quite enjoy his team radio where he was very angry.
Oh, yeah.
And then said about the red flag set to 1 rules straight away. Calm down. There's no overdrive.
With an example to boot. I mean, this guy could go into an A-level exam and know the exact thing he needs to write for every question straight away.
Yeah, it is unbelievable. But yeah, what are our thoughts on that incident? Because Sainz did get that 5-second time penalty.
Steamrollers, right?
So he said it's the worst. He said something like it's the worst thing I've seen from this sport in years. He he was so
didn't agree with that.
Enraged. And my favorite part about the whole thing was when they went on the radio and said, "Carlos, you've got a 5-second penalty," and he just went, "No." And then, after he went into it afterwards,
I found that really hard to listen to.
But he left a 5-second pause. He just went, "No." Okay, well that's sorted. No, I mean it was it was his mistake again. He went into hard, I think, and tagged Alonso, and it would have, if they carried on running, then it would have ruined Alonso's race and taken a podium away from him. So it seemed like a pretty slam dunk penalty to me. But
he went in too hot. I agree as well. And I think he just went straight into him, didn't he?
Yeah.
I don't think the radio was the best part, actually, in my opinion. I found that really hard to listen to because I found he was so upset. He was so upset, and I mean, besides that, it's kind of like the emotion of the sport we can hit quite hard sometimes, particularly after because at that point we'd all been going for so long as viewers. So for him as a driver, thank goodness me, he's done. He's done 3 starts in this race.
It wasn't the enjoying your suffering, but it was just the way. It was just the reaction of, "Oh, you've got a penalty." No.
I think yeah. I was
leaving it there. No, I haven't. Okay.
There was a kind of thought afterwards from quite a few people that it was harsh.
I thought
I think he came in hot. He came in so hot.
I don't think he did. I think he was very under control. I think it was just, to me, I'd leaned more towards a racing incident. It just was one of those.
Yeah,
moves to me, because I don't think he did go into it. He wasn't locking up. He didn't go all the way to the edge of the track.
But he didn't go tight enough on the exit of the track anyway, because where he went on the track was where there was a car. That's my point of it. It's kind of like, yes, he was in control and he made it through the corner, but not enough, if that makes sense.
I
I
guess.
think he gets unlucky in a sense because Alonso is cutting back, a lot sharper than he is. But then it's the first, it's the
He's
first lap.
obviously there.
Yeah, it's a restart. Like it's, that's what's going to happen. You can't take your perfect line through the corner because there are, at that point, 14 other cars, 15 other cars around you. So yeah, I just think, yeah, it's I can see, it's obviously not intentional and all of that, but I just think by the letter, it just seemed pretty textbook.
Yes.
I agree with Adam, I'm afraid. I can see where you're coming from, Nigel. But I mean, if
No,
Gasly
you've
made that
you've
corner,
kind
it
of
would have been
swayed
worse.
me. To be fair, you've kind of
If
swayed
Gasly
me.
had made that corner, I don't even know what would have happened between those three cars. Gasly hadn't gone straight on. They're relatively lucky with that.
Very lucky, actually.
But I guess for Ferrari, I know they didn't get any
Oh
points.
yeah.
But the pace was encouraging because I did think they wouldn't even be in that kind of podium battle, and Sainz was much better than
The
Leclerc.
tire management was encouraging.
Yeah, that's the thing,
on a
yeah.
track where there was definitely a lot of tire wear in a weird way, but definitely in the hot weather of the race day, there was definitely tire wear. The Ferrari was in a competitive position, which is a definite improvement for Ferrari based on where they have been. It's hard to talk about an improvement for Ferrari in a race where they got 0 points, but there was one.
Yeah, and like Sainz out qualified Leclerc. In fact, like this is the thing. To me, the Leclerc getting spun on lap 1 was kind of similar to the Alonso Sainz thing, where I thought it's not really much in it. That I kind of see those two things as similar incidents with Stroll and Leclerc, and then Sainz and Alonso. Personally,
Leclerc's turning in. Like Alonso, was it Alonso or Stroll? He was on the inside, but they had nowhere to go. He had nowhere to go. So I think Leclerc was turning in across him.
Yeah, ready?
Yeah, because that was where my original gut reaction to what I was going to say there was, he's turning in and just replaying it a bit in my mind. But I think
pinches him.
Yeah, it's just kind of, it was sharp from Leclerc. It was a shame, but yeah, I think because like you say, the Sainz one was borderline, but I think a penalty. I think this one was borderline, but not.
Yeah. Anyway,
it reminded me of Sochi when Leclerc speared Stroll in Sochi 2020, where Leclerc speared Stroll into the barrier, and definitely should have got a penalty, but didn't.
Which corner?
At the end of the long turn 3. I remember it.
We're doing a lot of reminiscing over the last
It's a completely random incident.
Yeah, if you can remember these incidents, well done.
You can remember this. Just let us know at the number below.
Sergio, I wasn't saying that those were, I think, all the made incidents in the race. Sergio Perez had an absolutely nightmare Saturday. I don't think I've seen a car in practice like not crash, go off so many times and just look out of control. And then in his very first time flying lap in qualifying, turn 3, it just went too deep. He's kind of suggested there was a problem, whether this was to do with his engine braking or the braking itself. And I'd have to agree. I don't think Perez or any driver would go off that many times without there being some kind of problem.
He said they made an adjustment to the car. Was it between Friday and Saturday? And then he wanted to change. Well, I believe his words were he wanted to change it back, and they said no. So
they still then also did make adjustments between FP3 and qualifying as well. Anyway, well, as they normally do, but it feels like there was just never a window for that car. And to be honest, his race pace was pretty good considering. I think probably it did come to light in the heat a bit better than it did in the cold. I think there was probably a bit more the cold because, we saw Verstappen struggling to string quite a lot together throughout qualifying as well when it was quite chilly. It was about 12, 13 degrees through qualifying. It really wasn't the weather of the race day, and that Red Bull was in a much better nick on race day than on Saturday for both of them. So I think that does play into it as well.
He made some nifty moves though in the race itself. You know, there are a few where you kind of thought, particularly I forget which corner, but kind of the curve along the back by the lake and then going into the straight where there was the 2 DRS zones, and it felt like you could wait till the second one and make the move. But you know, there are a few times where it felt like, you know, if the drivers aren't inch perfect here, then there is going to be quite a bad crash. But he made it work, and yeah, he managed. I think Ocon and Piastri were the two that stood out. But you know, he looked urgent, which was good to see, you know, compared to, I don't know, say Bottas moving up through the field when he was at Mercedes. You know, it looked like he had real purpose. It looked through, you know, he was really, you know, getting on with it and not wanting to get stuck behind any of these cars for longer than he needed to.
I do genuinely think these cars raced really well at the circuit this year.
Yeah.
Because I know we can talk about the Red Bull's DRS advantage, but the other cars all raced really well at this circuit this year. And for a lot of it, DRS did work as it should do. I think it was the move Sainz did on Gasly, where he was able to sort of set him the dummy of not going for the move and then whack it down the inside at turn 3. And that is one of the perfect DRS zone lengths for where the cars are. I always find it a little bit tricky to sort of talk about DRS zone lengths because, you know, so much of the rest of the track plays into it and the way that driver has driven that. Because if you start a DRS zone right behind the car, of course the DRS zone is always going to be too long because he's just going to do a drive-by. So hang on, the way DRS should work is always a sore point with me, but this is how it should work.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think Perez is driving. I'm going to use the phrase "that's his job" because I think Red Bull did have such a big
ding ding
advantage, and fifth, with given all the incidents and that kind of thing, that's probably where I would have expected him.
He also
to be.
got very lucky at the end that the race did get. That it did get chalked off.
He sent it straight across the gravel.
But I think just following up on that point, actually, I did think I said before that I felt like the Australian Grand Prix did need, I guess, for the television audience and the worldwide audience, did maybe need, you know, a bit more of a memorable race, and I think it did get that. Maybe not always for the right reasons, and for about an hour longer than it needed to. But you know,
the track was good for it.
The first memorable Australian Grand Prix in 5 years? Like, you know, it was.
Shouldn't put it like that. It's fine.
Probably, yeah. Very quickly, because we are running out of
time. 2020 Australian Grand Prix was quite memorable.
Funny. Very quickly, McLaren had the best weekend of the season. Lando Norris 6, Oscar Piastri 8. Finally, Australians having a bit of luck and a decent result on home soil. Much needed. Yes,
we talked about it before the race.
Yeah. The drag is still going to be a massive problem because Norris had. It took a very long time to get past Hulkenberg, but when he did, it was very, very good. So I guess
they've got Baku coming up next, so that's not the best for it.
Encouraging signs, I guess.
Encouraging pace with the majority of the grid there as well. Actually, I would point out it wasn't just capitalizing; they did capitalize, but there was also encouraging pace.
Yeah,
at other points in the race.
It did feel like the track maybe played into what their strength would be a bit more, but you know, if you still got to take advantage of that, and they did, and you know,
I don't know if it did. I think they had a very draggy car, and they were still able to, in what has become quite a high speed track, still able to do all right.
Yeah, I think we said before, before the weekend that McLaren's no points before Australia wasn't as bad as it kind of looked because of various reliability and kind of issues. But now they've put a reasonably clean weekend together. They've shown their pace, and I think that's what we've seen now with 6 and 8 for them. Hulkenberg was 7th. We some thoughts that he could have been 3rd if because of Sainz penalty, if stuff was reinstated, but then it wasn't after Haas's protest. But he's really shown this is exactly what he needed for his comeback. He's proven me wrong about him. I could say this after the first few races, I think, because he has been better than Magnussen. Adam is smiling. You can speak about Hulkenberg.
I think he has come in and done the job he needed to. Really, I think because Bahrain wasn't a great race for him, as I remember, and Magnussen got into Q3 and Hulkenberg didn't, and then Haas didn't really do anything in the race. But much better. Or was it the other way around?
Hulkenberg did get into Q3 in Bahrain.
Oh, okay. Well, even better.
But
he
had a bad strategy.
Yeah. So
Magnussen got a point in Saudi.
So yeah, he's. I just think he's putting it all together that he promised beforehand. But you know, it is still a lot of the season to go, because I think when we talked about it, then at least from my side, it was, you know, we'll have to see how it goes over the whole season. And you know, it's a good start, but it is just a good start at the moment.
Yeah. Joe was ninth, and AlphaTauri finally got the first points thanks to Tsunoda finishing 10th. David Croft was slightly upset that he didn't finish 11th because of the three consecutive non-first
Let him have his
place
points.
but
He
yeah,
did well.
I know. Yeah, I think we said
Did some sketchy
Tsunoda.
defending. He still did well.
Aggressive defending. Go on.
Sketchy defending. Sketchy
Aggressive.
defending. It was so late.
But no,
But
yeah,
on
Tsunoda
Joe,
was driving.
Joe was
yeah, sure.
miles ahead of Bottas all weekend.
Yeah.
Which is surprising to be honest, because I didn't expect Bottas to be that far back actually on Joe. Joe had a really cracking weekend, and in the race was fighting for the points for the whole thing. Pretty much, you could see him having a legitimate charge there, whereas Bottas was off the back in a way that we've not seen from him properly in Alfa Romeo. It was really a disappointing drive for him. I don't know if he was stuck behind De Vries or Sargent or something, but
he was out back. But
yeah,
he did have a cracking helmet, Aboriginal art
he
helmet.
did. He did actually. That's a really good
racing.
point.
So
Worth a
I
shout out.
really wanted him to do well, actually, because he was kind of the good guy coming into the weekend. But he
My
didn't,
first
so,
reaction when we had that grid order, that timing order on lap 57 or whatever it was, after everyone had crashed out, and he was in like 7th or something. I was like, he does not deserve to be there. That was my first reaction to it, and I feel quite bad because yeah, he should capitalize on it. You know, they would deserve it, but of all the drivers there, I think Bottas deserved not to be in the points.
yeah.
And I mean that in the nicest possible way, because I don't like to dunk on him because he gets so much crap as Valtteri, and he doesn't deserve a lot of the time. But this race was bad.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Yeah, the weekend wasn't great for Bottas, but hopefully for him, it was just a one-off, and he can come back bouncing in 4 weeks, because there is a big gap now because of the cancelled Chinese Grand Prix, which hasn't been replaced. There's going to be a lot of development, a lot of upgrades. I guess, well, we've all kind of said before, just for personal reasons, that we're kind of happy that there is a 4-week break, to be honest, haven't we? But yeah, for the teams, it's going to be quite important for them to kind of align where they want to go with the upgrades and development this year, I think, this part of the season, because other than the summer break, where they'll then be focusing for next year, it's very rare that they get this kind of opportunity.
Well,
With the
there's
factory
a summer
open completely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot.
2 weeks summer shutdown. So yeah,
that's a good point. But yeah, are there any other thoughts on the weekend or the 4-week break or anything ever in life?
I think we've
It's the first F1 race this year that's felt like a massive event.
Yeah.
That's
true.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. I think, yes, this is the nature of the Grand Prix, but after Bahrain and Saudi for qualifying and the race, I had no interest in watching the post-race discussions and things like that. I've just been like, well, what are they going to talk about? They're just going to talk about one random incident that I have no interest in. But for this, it was genuinely really, really, really interesting. And I watched it all, and it was like being an F1 fan from like when I was 14 again, where I'd watch everything and things like that. And
I mean, even 2019, it wasn't there wasn't a championship fight, but there was great action at a lot of races, and there was good racing, so it didn't matter so much. And that's, you know, if we can have a repeat of that this season, then it's not going to be so bad. In fact, it might even be quite good.
It might be quite good. Let's hope it's quite
might
good.
be quite good.
Yeah. We will be
on that
back.
note.
Yeah, we will be back for more podcasts in between now.
It's a good motto for the podcast, that really, isn't it? It's a good slogan. It's like, it might be quite good.
Tagline.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. We hope you can enjoy. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. We hope you can join us next time as well. So yeah, thanks. Thank you, Freddie. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Nigel.
Goodbye.
Bye.